Have you ever felt sleepless and walked alone at night? Suddenly, a beautiful girl approaches you and invites you to play Super Smash Bros. In her apartment. But the girl turns out to be a vampire. Our main character is Yamori, a junior high school student who is good at studying and friendly with his friends. One day, Yamori decided to stop going to school. He no longer wanted to go to school because he had rejected girls and felt awkward towards his friends. Since he stopped going to school, the thing that bothered him the most was the problem of sleep. Therefore, he wandered at night to overcome his insomnia. When Yamori was about to buy liquor, a girl stopped him. The girl's name was Nazuna, and she questioned Yamori's age, as he looked younger than 20. Despite being caught going to buy liquor, Nazuna wouldn't report him to the police or anything like that. Instead, she wanted to help Yamori overcome his problems. Nazuna knew the reason why many people like to stay up late, so she took Yamori somewhere so that he could sleep well. Yamori didn't understand what Nazuna was going to do, but he couldn't do anything but obey her words. So in order to get out of the situation, Yamori would pretend to sleep for a while and then return home. Meanwhile, Nazuna plans to make Yamori fall asleep to suck his blood. While Yamori pretended to be asleep, Nazuna began to carry out her plan. This caused Yamori to wake up immediately and then ask what she had done. Because there were traces of blood on Yamori's neck, Nazuna argued that a mosquito had bitten him, but her lie was obvious, so Yamori began to think that Nazuna was a vampire. Nazuna confessed that she was a vampire. After learning about the existence of vampires, Yamori suddenly had the desire to become one of them. But he can't become a vampire just because his blood is sucked. One of the conditions, in order to become a vampire, is that Yamori must fall in love with Nazuna and let his blood be sucked. The next night, Yamori sneaked out of the house to see Nazuna, but Nazuna was nowhere to be found despite searching all over the place. When Yamori returned to his neighborhood, Nazuna herself approached him. Yamori didn't want the hassle of having to look for her every night. For that, he asked for Nazuna's cell phone number so that she could be contacted more easily. Unfortunately, Nazuna did not have a cell phone that could be used, but since Yamori was in her house, Nazuna immediately asked her to lie down next to her. When Yamori lay next to Nazuna, Nazuna asked Yamori if she could suck his blood. Yamori did not allow it because even if his blood was sucked, it could not turn into a vampire. Moreover, he was still upset because Nazuna was just looking for someone else to suck her blood. Nazuna said something to Yamori. Actually, the person she was looking for was Yamori. After all, Nazuna felt that Yamori's blood tasted very delicious, so finding someone else with blood that was more delicious than him's would be very difficult. After hearing this, Yamori was relieved. The reason was not important. He just wanted Nazuna to suck his blood. The next day, Yamori was still having trouble finding Nazuna, so he brought a toy transceiver so he could communicate remotely. At first, they were able to use the device as planned, but after they played in the school area, suddenly someone else contacted him. The person who owns the transmitter is a girl named Akira. She is his childhood friend who used to play with him a lot. As Yamori's friends grew, Akira lost the chance to talk to him. Then after a long time waiting for Yamori to contact her, Akira was surprised to be able to meet him under these circumstances. Although they had not spoken to each other for a long time, Akira still considered him a friend, while Yamori did not think so because he felt that there had been a misunderstanding. A few moments later, Yamori began to ask Akira why she was wearing a uniform. Akira said she was going to school. She was used to getting up early and going for a walk before going to school. Yamori said that lately, he often stayed up late, so they planned to meet each other the next day. After playing with Nazuna, Yamori met Akira, who was going to school. Nazuna secretly watched them from a distance. Then after finding out that Yamori was seeing another girl, Nazuna immediately approached him, and there was a complicated situation. Akira said she didn't mind if Yamori skipped school, but he shouldn't do anything dangerous. Because Yamori and Nazuna looked very familiar, Akira assumed they were dating. The words made Nazuna's face red. To clear up the misunderstanding, Nazuna showed her something. She sucked Yamori's blood to tell her that she was a vampire. After knowing all that, Akira invited Yamori to go to school. This made Nazuna very upset and angry with Yamori. Nazuna was annoyed because Yamori did not immediately give an answer when Akira invited him to go to school after knowing that Yamori would not return to school. Nazuna returned to her usual behavior. When Nazuna tried to suck his blood unknowingly, they kissed. After yesterday they kissed, Yamori was confused about what to behave like when he met Nazuna, because he thought that he had fallen in love. Yamori looked very enthusiastic when Nazuna met him, but all of that was just a misunderstanding. It turned out that he still had no feelings for Nazuna. Even though Nazuna had sucked his blood, Yamori still hadn't turned into a vampire. Lately, Akira has been having trouble sleeping, so she decided to go to school even though it was still midnight. At the same time, Akira met Yamori, then Yamori invited her to play together with Nazuna. When they played the game, Akira was relieved that Yamori's cheerful nature had not changed. At first, she thought they would do something sus because they said they wanted to play at midnight. A few moments later, the atmosphere in the place immediately changed drastically. Akira looked surprised because they were going to sleep together. Akira questioned the purpose of the action. As Akira looked very curious, Yamori said that he wanted to turn into a vampire. When Nazuna was alone, she seemed to be bored with her daily life, so she decided to go out to enjoy the night before meeting Yamori. She spent a little time visiting public baths, and when Yamori called her, she immediately went outside to meet him. When they met, Yamori was fascinated by her appearance. Yamori couldn't look away because Nazuna's hairstyle was different from usual. To confirm his feelings, he also allowed Nazuna to suck his blood. Then after drinking his blood, Nazuna can know Yamori's feelings of being fascinated when he sees her. But all of that was still not enough to turn him into a vampire. Besides that, because Nazuna sucked too much of his blood, Yamori had to rest because he was very tired. After that, Yamori took Nazuna somewhere. Then he looked sorry for taking her to the wrong place. For now, Nazuna only sucks Yamori's blood, while previously, she had sucked the blood of unknown people. Nazuna basically runs a massage business out of her apartment, and when her customers are satisfied, she sucks their blood. She takes her job seriously, though she has learned how to massage to make her customers feel satisfied. Nazuna shows her skills to Yamori, dressed as a nurse. She tries to make Yamori feel comfortable. When Nazuna is about to suck his blood, suddenly someone comes to her apartment. It turned out that she was one of the guests who had become her customer. The guest really liked her massage, but because Nazuna was already tired, she asked Yamori to replace her. Although he initially refused, in the end, Yamori complied with Nazuna's request. Although he was still inexperienced, he would try his best to take her place. In return, he would get half the money paid, and Nazuna would reward him if he did so. The customer's name was Shirakawa. She was an office worker who was often tired. To relieve her fatigue, she visited Nazuna's apartment. At first, she felt a little worried because the person who accepted her was different, especially since he was a young person who should be prohibited from working. After listening to the reason why Yamori was working, Shirakawa was relieved. She looked so happy, especially when Yamori told her about his boring school life. At the same time, Shirakawa suddenly cried when talking about her work. She no longer wanted to go to work because she was fed up with the people in her office. A while later, Shirakawa gets a call from her boss. Yamori feels that Shirakawa is similar to him, so he wouldn't let her go when called by her boss. Yamori asked Nazuna to hold her, but Nazuna threw her out the window. Shirakawa thought she was going to die, so Yamori and Nazuna caught her so she could land safely. Yamori apologized for using harsh means, all that he did because he felt it would be better not to let her go. Yamori said the boss who called her at night was very unreasonable, so she should have been more relaxed in dealing with the situation. But after all, Shirakawa had to go to work. Even so, Yamori managed to do something to make her feel better. The next day, Nazuna already felt bored with her daily life, so Yamori suggested she try swimming at night. The atmosphere of the swimming pool at night felt very different, and Yamori saw that there were many adults around him. Something made him feel uncomfortable. He felt a little upset because Nazuna let other guys approach her. As an apology, Nazuna took him to the school swimming pool. In another place, Yamori met Shirakawa again. Shirakawa wanted to thank him because he had eased her problems. At the same time, it suddenly rained. Then when Yamori took shelter from the rain, there was a girl who approached him. It seemed that the girl was still a high school student, but Yamori had never even seen her school uniform. Because Yamori looked at her for too long, the girl teased him. She said she was a little interested in him because Yamori's nature was very cute. A few moments later, she began to show her true form, and it turned out that the girl was the same vampire as Nazuna. There is a certain reason why the girl approached Yamori. She had the goal of killing Yamori because he already knew the existence of vampires. Actually, vampires have strict rules not to get close to humans. If the human is not made a follower, then it is not allowed to continue living. Nazuna didn't care about these rules. She immediately came to protect Yamori from being killed. When Nazuna was focused on fighting, there was another vampire who took Yamori away. Yamori, who had known the existence of vampires, was a threat to them, so he had to choose one of them and become her subordinate. But whatever they have done to him, Yamori is only interested in Nazuna. So they handed Yamori over to Nazuna to become her follower. But Yamori only has a time limit of 1 year. He must immediately love Nazuna to be able to turn into a vampire. It seemed that Yamori had run out of ways to bring his relationship with Nazuna closer, so he immediately talked about this to Akira and consulted her. Unfortunately, Akira didn't have much time to help him. She had to go to school because class time was about to start. While Akira was walking to her class, she met a guy who was lying in the middle of the stairs. He was named Maharu, a childhood friend who used to be close to Yamori. When they met, Maharu asked how Yamori was doing. He wanted them to play together again like they used to. Maharu will try to contact him, so he asks Akira to tell Yamori that he is worried about him. At night, Yamori meets a vampire named Siri. It seems that Siri has no intention of attacking him anymore. This time she wanted to help Yamori to bring his relationship with Nazuna closer. Siri gave Yamori advice to ask Nazuna out on a date. Then when Yamori asked her, Nazuna refused. Instead of going on a date, Nazuna is more concerned with the game she is playing. Yamori also turned off the game console. Thus, Nazuna had no choice but to comply. But even though Nazuna went with him, all his plans did not go smoothly. She could not enjoy her time alone with Yamori at all. In the end, Nazuna realized that someone else was planning it, even though the first date ended in failure. Nazuna didn't want things to end just like that, so she came to pick up Yamori and continued everything until the end. It turns out that carrying out activities as usual is enough to make her happy. Yamori doesn't need to bother carrying out other people's plans, which Nazuna doesn't like. After some time, Yamori met his old friend, Maharu. Maharu was a person he admired, so he was happy that Maharu still considered him a friend. At the same time, Akira appeared in front of them. Akira reprimanded the two because their conversation was disgusting. Akira told Maharu that Yamori often skipped school because he played with girls at night. So she asked Maharu to advise him, but since his friends called Maharu, they split up again to continue their business. When Yamori met Siri by the roadside, Nazuna immediately attacked Siri on the head, triggering an argument. Nazuna allowed Yamori to accompany her, though, as it seems Siri had no intention of hurting Yamori. When Yamori was accompanying Siri at the karaoke place, there was a guy who was watching her. Because she couldn't stand the behavior of the guy, Siri had the thought to just kill him. Yamori couldn't just let the guy get killed, so he tried to help him by keeping them away. There was a certain reason why he was bothering Siri. All this time, he really liked Siri, but he realized that she was not his girlfriend or the closest person to her. As long as she could be loved by him, he didn't mind being in any order. After learning that Siri was a vampire who sought followers by making her target fall in love, Akiyama decided to become her follower. As long as he could continue to be with her, Akiyama did not mind even though he lost his normal life. One of the vampires named Midori asked Nazuna for help to replace an employee who could not attend her workplace. Nazuna was asked to help her work at the Maid Cafe. After being given a special uniform and taught how to serve customers, Nazuna began to carry out her first task. But she doesn't fit into the job at all. Nazuna is very different from Midori, who is skilled and can become popular in a short time. The maid named Arisa is also great. Arisa was the most popular maid before Midori joined them. Behind all that, there is a little problem that is quite troublesome. Midori found a photo of the maid that was taken secretly. There was a little awkwardness from the photo because only Arisa was the target of the culprit. As for the other maids, no such photos were found. Because Midori wanted to find the culprit, Yamori decided to investigate further. After he noticed all the photos, Yamori checked every corner in the employee-only room. But he didn't find anything suspicious. But when trying to take a photo at the corner of the window, Yamori realized that a photo like that would not be able to be taken secretly. With that thought, he guessed who the culprit was. So after their work was done, he gathered all the relevant people at the employee's place. When everyone was gathered, Yamori told Midori to hide while Nazuna talked to Arisa to convince her that everyone had gone home. At that moment, the perpetrator began to carry out the action. It turned out that Arisa herself was the culprit. She deliberately took a photo of herself to get people's attention. After working at the cafe, Nazuna realized that improving services could be very profitable. So, she bought the items needed to improve her business services. A while later, Yamori went out to look for customers. They would look for people who were exhausted and then offer massage packages in their apartments. While Yamori was traveling around the city, he met a woman who looked very tired. He talked to her for a while and then offered her the services provided. She was interested in the massage package, but she wanted to try it because she was often tired after work. Out of curiosity, Yamori asked about her job. It turned out that she was a detective. Actually, she was not allowed to provide information about her work. But since Yamori often wandered at night, she took the opportunity to ask him a few things.
知らないって。
本当に。すまない。なんでもないんだ。
After some time, Yamori and his friends gathered at the school gate. When they entered the school area, Maharu forced them to confirm the 7 mysteries of the school. To make sure, they entered one room after another, which looked suspicious. Then, when they entered the classroom, Akira was attacked by an old man who looked scary. When Akira was attacked, Yamori immediately realized that the person was a vampire, so he immediately hit the vampire so that Akira could be saved. There are some things that Yamori doesn't understand. All this time, he always thought that being a vampire was fun, but in reality, all of that is not true. A detective who once met Yamori showed the bad side that vampires have. This made him realize that he still didn't know anything about the existence of vampires.
死んだよ。彼は今死んだ。
After seeing last night's incident, Yamori felt hesitant to continue his desire to turn into a vampire. Therefore, he immediately met Nazuna to discuss the previous incident. According to Nazuna, the vampire who lost his mind happened because he was starving. He could not hold back his vampire desire, so he could not control himself. Yamori asked if Nazuna had experienced it, and Nazuna replied that she didn't want to be equated with the vampire. Actually, she didn't really understand it, but it seemed that vampires would die if they didn't suck blood for 10 years, or in other words, they would survive for 10 years without eating. For the first time, Yamori felt afraid of vampires. When Yamori met with Maharu, he was advised by Maharu to undo his intention to become a vampire. Maharu did not want to see his friend lose his mind like the previous vampire. After meeting with Nazuna and Mahiro, Yamori again discussed vampires with a detective named Anko. When they met, Yamori was given 2 choices. He had to decide to live as a human or be killed after turning into a vampire. It seems that Anko has no tolerance for alien creatures such as vampires. According to her, humans who hurt other humans are commonplace. But if there are humans who are harmed by vampires, then it cannot be allowed. Because, after all, vampires are evil creatures for humans, so Anko will kill all existing vampires with her own hands. Yamori did not consider them as evil people. According to him, they also had a normal life and respected humans. Therefore, Yamori could not accept the opinion of the detective. When Yamori was hiding in a park, a vampire named Hatsuka came then took him to his apartment. When he arrived at his apartment, Yamori was surprised because several people were waiting for Hatsuka's arrival. After Hatsuka's complaint came with Yamori, they looked very upset. Shortly after arriving at his apartment, there was something that made Yamori surprised. Although his appearance was like a girl, but actually Hatsuka was a boy. With his current appearance, he can be liked by both boys and girls, so he can easily get many followers. Elsewhere, Nazuna visited her friends and then said that Yamori could not become a vampire. Even though he could not become a vampire, Nazuna begged them to let him stay. After learning that Yamori was hesitant to become a vampire, Hatsuka gave advice to just become his follower because the possibility of his loving Nazuna was very small. He could replace her to turn him into a vampire. Hatsuka said making Yamori love him was very easy. He just needed to brainwash him into thinking he was in love with him. Yamori didn't care, even though almost all vampires would target him. He still thought he wanted to fall in love with Nazuna alone, so he immediately left Hatsuka and immediately went to Nazuna's place. Fortunately, everything was fine. They decided to leave it alone because Nazuna had promised to become a vampire who could make him fall in love, while Yamori had made up his mind to love Nazuna.